Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Why? Yeah, I mean, geez, why would you expect? I think this is my laptop's built-in microphone though. Um, audio input capture. Why would things just stop? Why did it switch to default with nothing on it? Uh, 1 second. Razor. Done. How's this? Are we back? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. Um yeah, that's fun. I've literally had the same audio input capture since the day I got my microphone, and today Streamlabs decided to forget what it was. That's fantastic. You blame Pete, yeah. So okay. Sorry, I just had to send a quick message. Unless Pete is here. Hi everybody. If you've been on the Twitters this morning, so I went on Twitter, and I always take a glance over on that column to see what's trending, and I see among the trending topics is Captain Phasma. I'm like, what the heck? So if you haven't seen it yet, on Reddit there is a "Am I the Asshole" thread about parents who wanted to. I'm not sure they actually did. I understand that, Pandar. Parents naming their their new daughter Captain Phasma. Not naming her Phasma, mind you, but naming her Captain Phasma, like a first name. It's definitely a choice. Definitely a choice. So I was retweeting about how, boy, if there was only a place you could go to find out about cool character names from Star Wars that might be better than Captain Phasma as a name. I say, look, Captain Phasma looks cool. There's not really all that much to her character, but Anyway, so if you see people talking about it, you can definitely use the topic to plug my book. Hey, Erdensk, welcome everyone. So yeah, so anyway, I got a couple messages regarding that. Cool. All right. So today is Thematic Thursday, but as I said, for the next couple weeks, we're gonna use Thursday to continue Beowulf. Wow, the color on my camera is like crazy today, but I guess it doesn't look so bad. It's just very bright. Yeah, the captain part. I mean, I don't know. People are weird. That is my wife lurking in the background. It's saturation, right? That's what this is. All right, I'm gonna try one slider and one slider only. Do you want to wave when you go back there? Okay, hold on. Let me. Yeah, Jar Jar would definitely go north. Okay, saturation is at 44. Oh, let's go to 35. Better. That's better. I don't look so much like I'm wearing makeup, which is nothing wrong with that. I don't have any makeup on. That looks better. Not today anyway. Cool. All right. So what did we find out last time in Beowulf? Well, there's this King Hrothgar, and he makes the biggest, best haul in all of existence. But wouldn't you know? Yeah, I tried the last layer. But wouldn't you know? A monster lives nearby. A monster descended from Cain, because these are stories that take place during Christian times. Although we do have monsters and creatures and magic and stuff like that, but it's couched within a universe where God exists, and all of these monsters come from characters that we've heard of from the Bible. So yeah, so there's this creature, Grendel. It doesn't like this hall. It doesn't like all their noise and all their celebrating. It comes during the night only, mostly, and it just annihilates people, kills them in droves. Blood is pouring through the halls, and it drags them out, and who knows what it does with the bodies. Probably eats them. Hey, Pete, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're playing with color and talking about naming your child Captain Phasma, which is what the internet is all about today. Yeah, and then the great hero Beowulf has heard about such things and has traveled with his men on a ship to help out. Oh, and we left off. Do I want to know? Oh, Pete, check out trending Twitter right now, and a particular "Am I the Asshole" thread on Reddit. So one of Hrothgar's people, Unferth. So Beowulf is just meeting everybody, and this person says, "What, Beowulf? You're not that great. I heard about this swimming contest and you lost." And then Beowulf against Brecca. Well, we have established that, Pete. Yes, trending Twitter is not necessarily a place you want to hang out, but it is interesting when you see Captain Phasma trending. So, yes. So Beowulf starts to explain about this swimming race, right? And about how they swam in their armor and they had their swords with them. I can only assume they were holding their swords in their mouths, maybe, unless they were just sheathed on their waist. But anyway, last we heard in chapter 8, a sea monster had come up and pulled Beowulf down, and Beowulf had killed it in the water. And now we pick up chapter 9, and Beowulf continues. Other monsters crowded around me, continually attacking. I treated them politely, offering the edge of my razor-sharp sword. But the feast, I think, did not please them, filled their evil bellies with no banquet-rich food, thrashing there at the bottom of the sea. By morning, they decided to sleep on the shore, lying on their backs, their blood spilled out across the sand. Afterwards, sailors could cross that sea road and feel no fear. Nothing would stop their passing. Then God's bright beacon appeared in the east. The water lay still, and at last I could see the land, wind-swept cliff walls at the edge of the coast. Fate saves the living when they drive away death by themselves. Lucky or not, 9 was the number of huge sea monsters I killed. What man anywhere under heaven's high arch has fought in such darkness, endured more misery, or been harder pressed? Yet I survived the sea, smashed the monster's hot jaws, swam home from my journey. The swift-flowing waters swept me along, and I landed on Finnish soil. I've heard no tales of you, Unferth, telling of such clashing terror, such contests in the night. Brecca's battles were never so bold. Neither he nor you can match me, and I mean no boast, have announced no more than I know to be true. And there's more. You murdered your brothers, your own close kin. Words and bright wit won't help your soul. You'll suffer hell's fires, Unferth, forever tormented. Ekelglaf's proud son, if your hands were as hard, your heart as fierce as you think it is, no fool would dare to raid your hall, ruin Herot, and oppress its prince, as Grendel has done. But he's learned that terror is his alone, discovered he can come for your people with no fear of reprisal. He's found no fighting here, but only food, only delight. He murders as he likes, with no mercy, gorges and feasts on your flesh, and expects no trouble, no quarrel from the quiet Danes. Now the Geats will show him courage. Soon he can test his strength in battle. And when the sun comes up again, opening another bright day from the south, anyone in Denmark may enter this hall. That evil will be gone. Hrothgar, gray-haired and brave, sat happily listening, the famous ring-giver sure, at last, that Grendel could be killed. He believed in Beowulf's bold strength and the firmness of his spirit. There was the sound of laughter and the cheerful clanking of cups and pleasant words. Then Wealhtheow, Hrothgar's gold-ringed queen, greeted the warriors. A noble woman who knew what was right, she raised a flowing cup to Hrothgar first, holding it high for the lord of the Danes to drink, wishing him joy in that feast. The famous king drank with pleasure and blessed their banquet. Then Wealhtheow went from warrior to warrior, pouring a portion from the jeweled cup for each, till the bracelet-wearing queen had carried the mead cup among them, and it was Beowulf's turn to be served. She saluted the Geats' great prince, thanked God for answering her prayers, for allowing her hands the happy duty of offering mead to a hero who would help her afflicted people. He drank what she poured, Edgitho's brave son, then assured the Danish queen that his heart was firm and his hands ready. When we crossed the sea, my comrades and I already knew that all my purpose was this, to win the goodwill of your people or die in battle, pressed in Grendel's fierce grasp. Let me live in greatness and courage, or here in this hall welcome my death. Wealhtheow was pleased with his words, his bright-tongued boasts. She carried them back to her lord, walked nobly across to his side. The feast went on, laughter and music, and the brave words of warriors celebrating their delight. Then Hrothgar rose, Healfdane's son, heavy with sleep. As soon as the sun had gone, he knew that Grendel would come to Heorot, would visit that hall when night had covered the earth with its net, and the shapes of darkness moved black and silent through the world. Hrothgar's warriors rose with him. He went to Beowulf, embraced the Geats' brave prince, wished him well, and hoped that Heorot would be his to command. And then he declared, "No one strange to this land has ever been granted what I've given you, no one in all the years of my rule. Make this best of all mead halls yours, and then keep it free of evil. Fight with glory in your heart. Purge Heorot, and your ship will sail home with its treasure holds full." End of chapter 9. Chapter 9 was a little bit longer than the other ones. Some cool stuff going on in this chapter. Definitely wanted to go. Yeah. Oh, he's so humble. But remember, I mean, great warriors have to talk about their exploits and all of the great stuff that they've done so that they can do more. So we start off with Beowulf still swimming, swimming, just murdering his way through sea monsters. They end up just beached on the ground. There were 9 of them that he's killed. Yeah, and they're dead. And then that area of the sea never repopulated with sea monsters, which is kind of cool. There was something else I wanted to speak of. Oh, and he talks about like hell's fires. So again, we have divine justice and God in here, not other gods and monsters. There's no other. It's funny because Beowulf rebukes this guy who was calling him weak, but that guy Unferth doesn't have any more to say. He just slinks away, theoretically. We get Hrothgar's wife, and she has her own cool epithet, Ring Giver. No, I'm sorry. That was Bracelet-Wearing Queen, right? Which we hear twice just on 2 pages. So that's an epithet, obviously, that we'll see repeated. There was something else I wanted to mention, but no, I can't remember. That's fine. So they all drink, and Hrothgar, because he's a little bit older, he gets sleepy, and he says, all right, boys, do your best. Hopefully when I wake up in the morning, things will be better. And if you kill Grendel, you'll get to go home with a whole bunch of treasure. Sounds good. All right, chapter 10. Then Hrothgar left that hall, the Danes' great protector, followed by his court. The queen had preceded him, and he went to lie at her side, seek sleep near his wife. It was said that God himself had set a sentinel in Heorot, brought Beowulf as a guard against Grendel, and a shield behind whom the king could safely rest. And Beowulf was ready, firm with our Lord's high favor and his own bold courage and strength. He stripped off his mail shirt, his helmet, his sword, hammered from the hardest iron, and handed all his weapons and armor to a servant, ordered his war gear guarded till morning. And then, standing beside his bed, he exclaimed, "Grendel is no braver, no stronger than I am. I could kill him with my sword. I shall not, easy as it would be. This fiend is a bold and famous fighter, but his claws and teeth scratching at my shield, his clumsy fists beating at my sword blade, would be helpless. I will meet him with my hands empty, unless his heart fails him, seeing a soldier waiting weaponless, unafraid. Let God in his wisdom extend his hand where he wills, reward whom he chooses." Then the Geat's great chief dropped his head to his pillow, and around him, as ready as they could be, lay the soldiers who had crossed the sea at his side, each of them sure that he was lost to the home he loved, to the high-walled towns and the friends he had left behind, where both he and they had been raised. Each thought of the Danes murdered by Grendel in a hall where Geats and not Danes now slept. But God's dread loom was woven with defeat for the monster, good fortune for the Geats. Help against Grendel was with them, and through the might of a single man they would win. Who doubts that God in his wisdom and strength holds the earth forever in his hands? Out in the darkness the monster began to walk. The warriors slept in that gabled hall where they hoped that he would keep them safe from evil, guard them from death until the end of their days was determined and the thread should be broken. But Beowulf lay wakeful, watching, waiting, eager to meet his enemy and angry at the thought of his coming. End of chapter 10. So we've got... So Beowulf, Beowulf's a little arrogant, a little boastful. He's talked about all of his great deeds, great accomplishments, how strong he is. And then he knows Grendel's going to come at night, but what does Beowulf do? He takes off all of his armor. He hands his armor and all of his weapons to somebody to keep watch over them, and he lays down on his pillow. He wants to fight Grendel hand to hand, man to monster, because that will increase his glory that much more. His men are there with him, and they're not quite as confident as Beowulf is. They're a little more worried. But they all lay down to go to sleep, and Grendel stirs. Chapter 11. Out from the marsh, from the foot of misty hills and bogs, bearing God's hatred, Grendel came, hoping to kill anyone he could trap on this trip to High Heorot. He moved quickly through the cloudy night, up from his swampland, sliding silently toward that gold-shining hall. He had visited Hrothgar's home before, knew the way, but never, before nor after that night, found Heorot defended so firmly, his reception so harsh. He journeyed, forever joyless, straight to the door, then snapped it open, tore its iron fasteners with a touch, and rushed angrily over the threshold. He strode quickly across the inlaid floor, snarling and fierce. His eyes gleamed in the darkness, burned with a gruesome light. Then he stopped, seeing the hall crowded with sleeping warriors, stuffed with rows of young soldiers resting together. And his heart laughed. He relished the sight, intended to tear the life from those bodies by morning. The monster's mind was hot with the thought of food and the feasting his belly would soon know. But fate, that night, intended Grendel to gnaw the broken bones of his last human supper. Human eyes were watching his evil steps, waiting to see his swift, hard claws. Grendel snatched at the first Geat he came to, ripped him apart, cut his body to bits with powerful jaws, drank the blood from his veins, and bolted him down, hands and feet. Death and Grendel's great teeth came together, snapping life shut. Then he stepped to another still body, clutched at Beowulf with his claws, grasped at a strong-hearted, wakeful sleeper, and was instantly seized himself, claws bent back as Beowulf leaned up on one arm. That shepherd of evil, guardian of crime, knew at once that nowhere on earth had he met a man whose hands were harder. His mind was flooded with fear, but nothing could take his talons and himself from that tight, hard grip. Grendel's one thought was to run from Beowulf, flee back to his marsh and hide there. This was a different Heorot than the hall he had emptied. But Higlac's follower remembered his final boast and, standing erect, stopped the monster's flight, fastened those claws in his fists till they cracked, clutched Grendel closer. The infamous killer fought for his freedom, wanting no flesh but retreat, desiring nothing but escape. His claws had been caught. He was trapped. That trip to Heorot was a miserable journey for the writhing monster. The high hall rang, its roof boards swayed, and Danes shook with terror. Down the aisles the battle swept, angry and wild. Heorot trembled, wonderfully built to withstand the blows, the struggling great bodies beating at its beautiful walls, shaped and fastened with iron, inside and out. Artfully worked, the building stood firm. Its benches rattled, fell to the floor, gold-covered boards grating as Grendel and Beowulf battled across them. Hrothgar's wise men had fashioned Heorot to stand forever. Only fire, they had planned, could shatter what such skill had put together, swallow in hot flames such splendor of ivory and iron and wood. Suddenly the sounds changed. The Danes started in new terror, cowering in their beds as the terrible screams of the Almighty's enemy sang in the darkness, the horrible shrieks of pain and defeat, the tears torn out of Grendel's taut throat, Hell's captive caught in the arms of him who of all of the men on earth was the strongest. That's so rad. That's such great imagery, right, of this fight. So Grendel comes in, and it's like, what? You laid out a feast for me? All of these people? Hey, Rabbit Wombat. Well, I'm glad you were able to make it after the conference call. Also, hello. Yeah, so Grendel is mighty pleased to find Heorot chock full of bodies. Descends upon one. He does manage to eat one of them. Unfortunately for Grendel, the second person he seizes upon is Beowulf. Beowulf is ready. Jumps up, grabs him, bends back his claws, and they begin to wrestle and crash and smash through the hall. Everybody hearing that the entire hall is shaking. And we hear all sorts of cool imagery about how scared Grendel is, how surprised he is. Grendel is very, very human-like here. Has lots of human emotions, human thoughts. Obviously, he has claws, and he is somewhat larger than human, right? He's eating people. He's sort of gobbling them down. So there's definitely the idea that he is larger and monstrous. But again, he definitely has human aspects to him, which is interesting. Okay, moving on. Chapter 12. That mighty protector of men meant to hold the monster till its life leaped out, knowing the fiend was no use to anyone in Denmark. All of Beowulf's band had jumped from their beds, ancestral swords raised and ready, determined to protect their prince if they could. Their courage was great, but all wasted. They could hack at Grendel from every side, trying to open a path for his evil soul, but their points could not hurt him. The sharpest and hardest iron could not scratch at his skin, for that sin-stained demon had bewitched all men's weapons, laid spells that blunted every mortal man's blade. And yet his time had come, his days were over, his death near. Down to hell he would go, swept groaning and helpless to the waiting hands of still worse fiends. Now he discovered, once the afflictor of men, tormentor of their days, what it meant to feud with Almighty God. Grendel saw that his strength was deserting him, his claws bound fast, Higlac's brave follower tearing at his hands. The monster's hatred rose higher, but his power had gone. He twisted in pain, and the bleeding sinews deep in his shoulder snapped. Muscle and bone split and broke. The battle was over. Beowulf had been granted new glory. Grendel escaped, but wounded as he was, he could flee to his den, his miserable hole at the bottom of the marsh, only to die, to wait for the end of all his days. And after that bloody combat the Danes laughed with delight. He who had come to them from across the sea, bold and strong-minded, had driven affliction off, purged Heorot clean. He was happy now with that night's fierce work. The Danes had been served as he'd boasted he'd serve them. Beowulf, a prince of the Geats, had killed Grendel, ended the grief, the sorrow, the suffering forced on Hrothgar's helpless people by a bloodthirsty fiend. No Dane doubted the victory, for the proof, hanging high from the rafters where Beowulf had hung it, was the monster's arm, claw, and shoulder, and all. Yes. I know, right? They could totally do another adaptation of this. I don't think I've ever actually seen the CG movie. I've tweeted GIFs of it, but I don't think I've watched it. There have to have been other Beowulf adaptations made. I know there have been other things that have been like very loosely adapted from Beowulf, other stories. But yeah, there must be other like attempted straight Beowulf tales. But yeah, so they're straining, they're wrestling, and then Beowulf rips off Grendel's arm. Grendel flees back to his den to go and die. And there's the proof. The arm of Grendel put up in the hall. But is that the end? Oh no, that is not the end. That is merely chapter 12 of... How many chapters are there? 43. Interesting. And then, in the morning, crowds surrounded Heorot, warriors coming to that hall from faraway lands, princes and leaders of men hurrying to behold the monster's great, staggering tracks. They gaped with no sense of sorrow, felt no regret for his suffering, when tracing his bloody footprints, his beaten and lonely flight, to the edge of the lake, where he dragged his corpse-like way, doomed and already weary of his vanishing life. The water was bloody, steaming and boiling in horrible pounding waves, heat sucked from his magic veins. But the swirling surf had covered his death, hidden deep in murky darkness his miserable end, as hell opened to receive him. Then old and young rejoiced, turned back from that happy pilgrimage, mounted their hard-hoofed horses, high-spirited stallions, and rode them slowly toward Heorot again, retelling Beowulf's bravery as they jogged along. And over they swore that nowhere on earth, or under the spreading sky, or between the seas, neither south nor north, was there a warrior worthier to rule over men. But no one meant Beowulf's praise to belittle Hrothgar, their kind and gracious king. And sometimes, when the path ran straight and clear, they would let their horses race, red and brown and pale yellow backs streaming down the road. And sometimes a proud old soldier, who had heard songs of the ancient heroes and could sing them all through, story after story, would weave a net of words for Beowulf's victory, tying the knot of his verses smoothly, swiftly into place with a poet's quiet skill. Singing his new song aloud while he shaped it, and the old songs as well. Sigmund's adventures, familiar battles fought by that glorious son of Vels, and struggles too against evil and treachery that no one had ever heard of, that no one knew except Fitla, who had fought by his uncle's side, a brave young comrade listening carefully when Sigmund's tongue unwound the wonders he had worked, confiding in his closest friend. There were tales of giants wiped from the earth by Sigmund's might, and forever remembered, fame that would last him beyond life and death, his daring battle with a treasure-rich dragon. Heaving a hoary grey rock aside, Sigmund had gone down to the dragon alone, entered the hole where it hid, and swung his sword so savagely that it slit the creature through, pierced its flesh and pinned it to a wall, hung it where his bright blade rested. His courage and strength had earned him a king-like treasure, brought gold and rich rings to his glorious hands. He loaded that precious hoard on his ship and sailed off with a shining cargo, and the dragon dissolved in its own fierce blood, No prince, no protector of his warriors knew power and fame and glory like Sigmund's. His name and his treasures grew great. Hermod could have hoped for at least as much. He was once the mightiest of men, but pride and defeat and betrayal sent him into exile with the Jutes, and he ended his life on their swords. That life had been misery after misery, and he spread sorrow as long as he lived it, heaped troubles on his unhappy people's heads, ignored all wise men's warnings, ruled only with courage. A king born, entrusted with ancient treasures and cities full of strong-hearted soldiers, his vanity swelled him so vile and rank that he could hear no voices but his own. He deserved to suffer and die. But Beowulf was a prince well loved, followed in friendship, not fear. Hermod's heart had been hollowed by sin. The horses ran when they could on the gravel path. Morning slid past and was gone. The whole brave company came riding to Heorot, anxious to celebrate Beowulf's success and stare at that arm. And Hrothgar rose from beside his wife and came with his courtiers crowded around him. And Wealhtheow rose and joined him, his wife and queen with her women, all of them walking to that wonderful hall. Ooh. So morning comes, and everybody has come to see what has happened. And interesting enough, there's a procession that goes from Heorot, from the hall, and follows the tracks of Grendel. And they weave and they wind, and they end up at a lake. And the tracks just stop at the water. And then everybody looks in the water, and it's full of blood, it's boiling, it's gross. Because yes, Grendel has dragged himself through the swamp to a lake and has gone underwater. Where has he gone? Well, we'll find out. And then they see that and they're like, okay, cool. He's down there. He's probably not coming back. And then they head back. And on the way, they let their horses sort of run and frolic and prance as they go. And a couple of the older people who are on the journey know these great old stories. And so they tell these tales. And again, you might think, well, why are we telling tales? Tales within tales. Well, we hear about Sigmund fighting a dragon. Might be important for later. And hoards and gold. And we get two very contrasting ideals of leadership and how a great warrior can be or not be a great leader. Basically, is he wise? Does he listen to other people? Or does he only hear his own voice? Which is a very good way of putting it. I can think of lots of people out there who only hear their own voices. But Beowulf is not like Hermod. He'll be much better. Cool. Yeah, and then even after all of that was going on, right? All of these people are awake. They're tracking down. They're following Grendel's footsteps, seeing what's going on. And then old Hrothgar finally wakes up. He's slept in, and he comes out to the hall. Chapter 14. Hrothgar stood at the top of the stairway and stared at Grendel's great claw, swinging high from that gold-shining roof. Then he cried, "Let God be thanked! Grendel's terrible anger hung over our heads too long, dropping down misery. But the Almighty makes miracles when he pleases, wonder after wonder, and this world rests in his hands. I had given up hope, exhausted prayer, expected nothing but misfortune forever. Heorot was empty, bloody. The wisest and best of our people despaired as deeply, found hope no easier, knew nothing, no way to end this unequal war of men and devils, warriors and monstrous fiends. One man found it, came to Denmark, and with the Lord's help, did what none of the Danes could do. Our wisdom, our strength, worthless without him. The woman who bore him, however, wherever, alive now or dead, knew the grace of the God of our fathers, was granted a son for her glory and his. Beowulf, best of soldiers, let me take you to my heart, make you my son too, and love you. Preserve this passionate peace between us, and take, in return, whatever you may want from whatever I own. Warriors deserving far less have been granted as much, given gifts and honored, though they fought no enemy like yours. Glory is now yours forever and ever. Your courage has earned it, and your strength. May God be as good to you forever as he has been to you here. Then Beowulf answered, What we did was what our hearts helped our hands to perform. We came to fight with Grendel, our strength against his. I wish I could show you here in Heorot his corpse, stretched on the floor. I twisted my fingers around his claw, ripped and tore at it as hard as I could. I meant to kill him right here, hold him so tightly that his heart would stop, would break, his life spill on this floor. But God's will was against me. As hard as I held him here, he still pulled free and ran, escaped from this hall with the strength fear had given him. But he offered me his arm and his claw, saved his life, yet left me that prize. And paying even so willingly for his freedom, he still fled, with nothing but the end of his evil days, ran with death pressing at his back, pain splitting his panicked heart, pulling him step by step into hell. Let him burn in torment, lying and trembling, waiting for the brightness of God to bring him his reward. Unferth grew quiet, gave up quarreling over Beowulf's old battles, stopped all his boasting, once everyone saw proof of that prince's strength. Grendel's huge claw swinging high from Hrothgar's mead hall roof, the fingers of that loathsome hand ending in nails as hard as bright steel. So hard, they all said, that not even the sharpest of swords could have cut it through, broken it off the monster's arm and ended its life, as Beowulf had done, armed with only his bare hands. Wow, wow, wow. So Hrothgar is very impressed. Talks to Beowulf. Oh, my boy, you did such a good job. The Lord was with you. Please, be my son. I love you. Adopts him, promises whatever you want, you will have it. Thank you so much. Beowulf talks very nicely here because, and again, thinking back to other epic poem heroes that we've read about, Achilles, Odysseus, Jason, and such, Beowulf's talked about his own accomplishments before, and will again, but he starts talking to Hrothgar and says, what we did was what our hearts helped our hands to perform. We came to fight with Grendel, our strength against his. So he's not all about his own glory here, even after Hrothgar is just heaping praise upon him. But no, Beowulf's first instinct is to talk about us, we, me and my men. We did this. We came. We had the strength, the drive to do this, which is pretty cool. And then he talks about the battle itself, and he's bummed. He's like, I really wanted to kill him here. I wanted his whole body here, not just his arm. But he got away. And then we get that cool final description of Grendel's arm and claw and those nails. Good stuff. Good stuff. Chapter 15. Then the king ordered Heorot cleaned and hung with decorations. Hundreds of hands, men and women, hurried to make the great hall ready. Golden tapestries were lined across the walls for a host of visitors to see and take pleasure in. But that glorious building was bent and broken, its iron hinges cracked and sprung from their corners all around the hall. Only its roof was undamaged when the blood-stained demon burst out of Heorot, desperately breaking Beowulf's grip, running wildly from what no one escapes, struggle and writhe as he will. Wanting to stay, what does that mean? Oh, interesting. Okay. Wanting to stay, we go, all beings here on God's earth, wherever it is written that we go, taking our bodies from death's cold bed to the unbroken sleep that follows life's feast. Then Hrothgar made his way to the hall. It was time, and his heart drew him to the banquet. No victory was celebrated better, by more or by better men and their king. A mighty host, and famous, they lined the benches rejoicing. The king and Hrothulf, his nephew, toasted each other, raised mead cups high under Harrowt's great roof, their speech courteous and warm. King and people were one. None of the Danes was plotting then, no treachery hidden in their smiles. Healfdane's son gave Beowulf a golden banner, a fitting flag to signal his victory, and gave him as well a helmet, and a coat of mail, and an ancient sword. They were brought to him while the warriors watched. Beowulf drank to those presents, not ashamed to be praised, richly rewarded in front of them all. No ring giver has given 4 such gifts, passed such treasures through his hands, with the grace and warmth that Hrothgar showed. The helmet's brim was wound with bands of metal, rounded ridges to protect whoever wore it from swords swung in the fiercest battles, shining iron edges in hostile hands. And then the protector of warriors, lord of the Danes, ordered 8 horses led to the hall, and into it 8 steeds with golden bridles. One stood with a jeweled saddle on its back, carved like the king's war seat it was. It had carried Hrothgar when that great son of Healfdane rode to war, and each time carried him wherever the fighting was most fierce, and his followers had fallen. Then Beowulf had been honored by both the gifts Hrothgar could have given him, horses and weapons. The king commanded him to use them well. Thus, that guardian of Denmark's treasures had repaid a battle fought for his people by giving noble gifts, had earned praise for himself from those who try to know truth. So it's party time. We do hear, though, that the hall, which we heard before, prophesied can only be destroyed by fire, still kind of messed up. Mainly not just from the battle, but from Grendel bursting out of its doors to flee into the swamps. He shook the frame. Parts of it have come loose. So it needs a little fixing up. But its roof is still perfect. Very important point. Roof is still perfect. And at the end of chapter 14, right before this one, we do hear that Unferth, that jerk who was impugning Beowulf's honor before, he shut his mouth. He's not talking any more shit. So they party, and yes, Hrothgar gives lavish gifts to Beowulf: a golden banner, a helmet, a coat of armor, and a sword. And it's interesting, especially, again, thinking of epic poetry that we've talked about before, where, especially, obviously the Greek epic poems, but whenever we'd read about or hear about sort of fancy gifts, especially from one warrior to another, especially armor and weapons, we would get long descriptions of them, right? All of the detail, all of how they were made, who made them, how they were made, what decoration is on them. And here it's very brief. We don't get much detail about this stuff at all. We hear just a little bit that the helmet has rounded ridges to protect it, and that's about it. So, yeah. And then there's a sort of another parade of horses that are going to be more gifts for Beowulf. And, yeah. And we do hear again also that Hrothgar here is being honored and being revered for giving such gifts to somebody who deserves them. So again, we're moving a little bit away from, oh, you just have to fight to be honored. And here it's like, no, look. Hrothgar is honorable too. Honor him because he was honorable to give gifts to the person who, succeeded on his behalf and helped him. Everybody following along? Any questions? Anything anybody wants to talk about? Of course, pop those into chat. I will read that in between chapters. Moving on to chapter 16. Beowulf, if you're just joining us. Ooh, interesting. It just starts off, and more. So we're going to hear more about what we read in chapter 15. The Lord of Heorot ordered treasure gifts for each of the Geats who'd sailed with Beowulf and still sat beside him, ancient armor and swords, and for the one murdered by Grendel, gold was carefully paid. The monster would have murdered again and again had not God, and the hero's courage, turned fate aside. Then and now men must lie in their Maker's holy hands, moved only as he wills. Our hearts must seek out that will. The world and its long days full of labor brings good and evil. All who remain here meet both. Hrothgar's hall resounded with the harp's high call, with songs and laughter and the telling of tales, stories sung by the court poet as the joyful Danes drank and listened, seated along their mead benches. He told them of Finn's people, attacking Hnaf with no warning, half wiping out that Danish tribe and killing its king. Finn's wife, Hnaf's sister, learned what good faith was worth to her husband. His honeyed words and treachery cost her 2 beloved lives, her son and her brother, both falling on spears guided by fate's hand. How she wept! And when morning came, she had reason to mourn, to weep for her dead, her slaughtered son and the bloody corpse of his uncle, both the men she most dearly loved, and whose love she could trust to protect her. But Finn's troops too had fallen to Danish spears. Too few were left to drive the Danes to their death, to force Hnaf's follower Hengest to flee the hall where they'd fought and he'd stayed. Finn offered them instead more war. Instead of more war, words of peace. There would be no victory. They'd divide the hall and the throne, half to the Danes, half to Finn's followers. When gifts were given, Finn would give Hengist and his soldiers half. Share shining rings, silver and gold, with the Danes, both sides equal, all of them richer, all of their purses heavy, every man's heart warm with the comfort of gold. Both sides accepted peace and agreed to keep it. Finn swore it with solemn oaths. What wise men had written was his words as well as theirs. He and the brave Hengist would live like brothers. Neither leader nor led would break the truce, would not talk of evil things, remind the Danes that the man they served killed Hnaf, their lord. They had no king and no choice. And he swore that his sword would silence wagging tongues if Frisian warriors stirred up hatred, brought back the past. A funeral pyre was prepared, and gold was brought. Hnaf's dead body was dressed for burning, and the others with him. Bloody mail shirts could be seen, and golden helmets, some carved with boar heads, all battle-hard and as useless now as the corpses that still wore them. Soldier after soldier. Then Hnaf's sister, Finn's sad wife, gave her son's body to be burned in that fire. The flames charring his uncle would consume both kinsmen at once. Then she wept again, and weeping sang the dead's last praise. The Danish king was lifted into place, smoke went curling up, logs roared, open wounds split and burst, skulls melted, blood came bubbling down, and the greedy fire demons drank flesh and bones from the dead of both sides until nothing was left. Holy crap, that got dark. We'll read that again in just a moment. So, gifts are being given from Hrothgar to Beowulf, specifically. But now in 16, we learn that not only Beowulf gets gifts, but his people too. His hardy mates who came with him to fight. They're also going to get treasure. And especially, specifically, gold is being paid out for the one warrior who was murdered by Grendel before Grendel got to Beowulf. Right? And that's nice. That's nice. Like, he was there. He was just as willing to fight as the rest of them. He just had the bad luck to be the first one Grendel came across when the monster entered the hall. So there's this party happening, and then a poet who is there. And now this we have also seen in... We didn't necessarily read out the passages, but we've seen this in every epic poem from the Greeks. Or as Fadir says, ancient geeks, for sure. In every epic poem, there is a poet within the story who tells a tale, at least one of each. And again, is this the idea of the epic poet who's writing this story putting a character like himself into the story? Is it? I mean, it's obviously a way to honor sort of the profession of epic storytelling and epic singing. But this one tells a tale of Hnaf and Finn and people dying and funerals to honor them and prizes and stuff like that. I don't know this exact story where it comes from. It sounds interesting. But again, it ends with a funeral. And all the noble stuff is happening, right? They pile up gifts. The men that they're celebrating are in their full armor. They're going to burn the bodies. But then the end of it, let me read that again. The Danish king was lifted into place. Smoke went curling up. Logs roared. Open wounds split and burst. Skulls melted. Blood came bubbling down. And the greedy fire demons drank flesh and bones from the dead of both sides until nothing was left. That is metal as fuck. That's crazy. I don't know. So this book has been in our house for decades. I don't remember if this book was originally mine or my wife's. There's very little written in it. There's no indication as to when it was purchased. I'm on page 58. I've not seen any writing in the book, any notes, any notations until those lines, and there's a little bracket around them because they are so freaking metal. And again, I don't know if I did that or my wife at some point in the ancient past, but that's pretty cool. When I turned the page and I saw that at the corner of my eye, I was like, oh, something interesting is coming up. And sure enough, we get a crazy description of... it's basically a description, a poetic description of how bodies break down when they're being burned. So it's not a pretty sight, as this tells you. Okay. Chapter 17. Probably read maybe 2 more for today. Finn, so we're still in that story. Finn released a few of his soldiers, allowed them to return to their distant towns and estates. Hengist lived the whole stormy winter through there with Finn, whom he hated. But his heart lived in Denmark, which he and the other survivors could not visit, could not sail to, as long as the wind-whipped sea crashed and whirled, or while winter's cold hands froze the water hard, tied it in icy knots. They would wait for the new year, for spring to come following the sun, melting the old year away and reopening the ocean. Winter was over, the earth grew lovely, and Hengist dreamed of his home, but revenge came first, settling his bitter feud with Finn, whose bloody sword he could never forget. He planned, he waited, wove plans, and waited. He waited twice in the same sentence. Then a Danish warrior dropped a sword in his lap, a weapon Finn and his men remembered and feared, and the time had come. And Hengist rose, hearing the Danes murmur, and drove his new sword into Finn's belly, butchering that king under his own roof. And the Danes rose, their hearts full of Finn's treachery and the misery he'd brought them, their sword arms restless and eager. The hall they'd shared with their enemies ran red with enemy blood, and bodies rolled on the floor beside Finn. They took the queen, looted everything they could find that It's not working. Oh my goodness. It's not working. The hall they'd shared with their enemies ran red with enemy blood, and bodies rolled on the floor beside Finn. They took the queen, looted everything they could find that belonged to her dead husband, loaded their ship with rings, necklaces, shining jewels wonderfully worked, and sailed, bringing treasure and a willing captive to the land she'd left and had longed for, alone no longer. The singer finished his song. His listeners laughed and drank, their pleasure loud in that hall. The cupbearers hurried with their sparkling vessels. And then the queen, Wealhtheow, wearing her bright gown, appeared among them, came to Hrothgar and Hrothulf, his nephew, seated peacefully together, their friendship and Hrothulf's good faith still unbroken. And Unferth sat at Hrothgar's feet. Everyone trusted him, believed in his courage, although he'd spilled his relative's blood. Then Wealhtheow spoke, "Accept this cup, my lord and king. May happiness come to the Danes' great ring-giver. May the Geats receive mild words from your mouth, words they have earned. Let gifts flow freely from your open hands, treasures your armies have brought you from all over the world. I have heard that the greatest of the Geats now rests in your heart like a son. Heorot stands purged, restored by his strength. Celebrate his courage, rejoice and be generous while a kingdom sits in your palm, a people and power that death will steal. But your sons will be safe, sheltered in Hrothulf's gracious protection, if fate takes their father while Hrothulf is alive. I know your nephew's kindness. I know he'll repay in kind the goodness you have shown him. Support your two sons as you and I sustained him in his own early days. His father dead, and he but a boy." Then she walked to the bench where Hrethric and Hrothmund, her two sons, sat together. Beowulf, prince of the Geats, was seated between them. Crossing the hall, she sat quietly at their side. Yes. So we get the continuation of the story. We have more murdering of people that supposedly are at peace. We get more treasure loaded up and sailed away. And then it ends, and Wealhtheow, Hrothgar's gracious wife, the queen, talks about how everything is cool now, and everything should be good. Should be good. All right, we'll do one more. Oh, it's quick. Okay. Ready for chapter 18? Let's get some more water. Pete, is that true? Is that a real thing that was announced? Yikes. All right. Chapter 18. They brought a foaming cup and offered it to Beowulf. It was taken and given in friendship, and he was given a mail shirt and golden armbands and the most beautiful necklace known to men. Nowhere in any treasure hoard anywhere on earth was there anything like it, not since Hama carried the Brosing's necklace home to his glorious city, saved its tight-carved jewels and his skin and his soul from Ermric's treachery, and then came to God. Higlak had it next, Swertin's grandson, defending the golden hoard his battle-hard hands had won for him. The Geats' proud king lost it, was carried away by fate when too much pride made him feud with the Frisians. He had asked for misery, it was granted him. He'd borne those precious stones on a ship's broad back. He fell beneath his shield. His body and his shining coat of mail and that necklace all lay for Franks to pluck, for jackal warriors to find when they walked through the rows of corpses. Geats and their king lay slaughtered wherever the robbers looked. The warriors shouted, and Wealhtheow spoke. "Wear these bright jewels, beloved Beowulf. Enjoy them, and the rings, and the gold, O fortunate young warrior. Grow richer, let your fame and your strength go hand in hand, and lend these two boys your wise and gentle heart. I'll remember your kindness. Your glory is too great to forget. It will last forever. wherever the earth is surrounded by the sea, the winds home and waves lap at its walls. Be happy for as long as you live. Your good fortune warms my soul. Spread your blessed protection across my son and my king's son. All men speak softly here. Speak mildly and trust their neighbors. Protect their lord. Our loyal followers who would fight as joyfully as they drink. May your heart help you do as I ask. She returned to her seat. The soldiers ate and drank like kings. The savage fate decreed for them hung dark and unknown. What would follow after nightfall when Hrothgar withdrew from the hall, sought his bed, and left his soldiers to theirs? Heorot would house a host of men that night, as it had been meant to. They stacked away the benches, spread out blankets and pillows, but those beer-drinking sleepers lay down with death beside their beds. They slept with their shining shields at the edge of their pillows. The hall was filled with helmets hanging near motionless heads. Spears stood by their hands. Their hammered mail shirts covered their chests. It was the Danes' custom to be ready for war wherever they rested, at home or in foreign lands, at their lord's quick call if he needed them, if trouble came to their king. They knew how soldiers must live. And that was chapter 18. So we get a little bit more description of some of the treasure that Beowulf is getting. But again, not so much a description of what it is itself, but who had it, where it came from, and how it came to pass down through different hands. And we hear Wealhtheow again, and she talks about how great Beowulf is. And in a cool little note, talks about how talking to Beowulf, your glory is too great to forget. It will last forever, wherever the earth is surrounded by the seas. So she's giving a prophecy that for all of time, people will remember the glory of Beowulf, which is kind of neat because, as we talked about, through crazy happenstance, essentially, only one manuscript of this story exists from ancient times, and that's how we have the story today. So, like, we are very lucky even to have this story, and it was prophesied that Beowulf's glory would last forever and be known to people all around the world forever, which is kind of cool. But even so, after all of that, Beowulf and his people lay down to sleep that night, armed and armored, because you never know. And warriors, they know how soldiers must live, sleeping and ready to fight at a moment's notice. So yes, that was chapter 18. 18 of 43. So we're getting there. It's a pretty quick read. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Enjoying the story, enjoying me tell the tale. I'm not exactly singing it, but I am relaying it. What else is happening, people? It's Thursday. Let's see, what am I doing? Oh, thanks, Pete. I love all these stories, and I genuinely love to read them. Cool, Rabbit Wombat, excellent. If I can provide a little bit of entertainment, I'm happy to do so. Let's see, my wife Chris is working on a big secret soap project. So outside of streaming, I pretty much am just taking care of the kids all day, every day these days. Edutainment, yeah. Oh yes, there are the soaps. Yeah, we're we actually don't have a huge inventory of some of the things that people like the most, just because, like I said, we've been so busy with my book release stuff, and now again Chris is working on a very specific project that's going to take a couple weeks. So unfortunately, yeah, restocks for the regular stuff will have to wait just a little bit, but there are cool things happening. So yeah, so I'm gonna be doing just dad duty for today. Tomorrow we'll be back with Figure Friday. I don't know what we'll be doing tomorrow. Built some more Mars Attacks models last week. That was cool. I'll look around. I'm sure I've got something. I do some other. I mean, I have a million models and things that I could work on or talk about. Pete had a really cool idea about doing some kind of a HeroClix thing. I don't know if I'm ready to do that tomorrow, but we can think about it and work on it for the future. And more Dune tomorrow with Jessica in the afternoon. And then Saturday Homebuddies stream. Pete, I know, I just want to make sure I know exactly how to do it before I do it. I don't want it to be a lot of like figuring out on stream, because that would be annoying. But yes, it is on my list. Saturday stream, Homebuddies. It is my stream again. Somehow it already is back to me. We are not, I say, doing an ancient bit of theater as we've done the last 2 times. I love doing it. It is quite a bit of work to get those things put together, and I just didn't have the time. But my wife thought of something really cool, and so this Saturday, I'll give you. You're the first people to hear it. Saturday is going to be the Homebuddies Hobby Night. So, no, Rubin Wombat, stop it. So on stream, all of us Homebuddies are going to be doing hobbies. There's going to be some miniature stuff happening, some art happening. It should be cool. I'm excited. It should be fun. So it'll just be like a casual hangout kind of thing. You all are welcome to be working on hobbies yourself at home while we're doing that. But so there'll be a lot of chatting and sharing our different artistic endeavors, maybe trying new things. Yeah. So again, it'll be different, but it should definitely be fun. More of a casual hangout kind of thing. Yeah, my wife thought of it. She's like, why didn't? Because before the virus. Thank you for the follow, Lolo Frosty. Well, that's a cool name. Yeah, before the virus, I would host hobby nights here at the house with my friends, maybe a couple times a month, just depending. And it was great, just having friends over, working on building models, painting models. We've had people, again, like doing art. They're doing all sorts of stuff. So this will be cool to do it with the Homebuddies. You can't eat the Dark Crystal. I'm right there with you, buddy. I have no desire to ever watch it again in any way, shape, or form. Don't unsubscribe. So anyway, yeah, so that's what we'll be doing on Saturday. So that should be cool. We'll do the normal posting about it, talking about it. You have a hobby, you call it awesome. And again, like, people have all sorts of hobbies that are, whatever you enjoy doing can be a hobby. You don't have to be good at, the kind of stuff that everybody else is doing, or you don't have to be good at anything. You can definitely, you can have a hobby that you enjoy that you're not good at, and that's fine too. Like, hobbies are supposed to be things that you enjoy, whether you're good at it, whether it's successful, whether you can make money at it. You don't need to do that. A hobby can just be something that you enjoy. A lot of times people get obsessed with turning a hobby into something more, but it doesn't have to be that. It can just be something you do for fun on your own, and that is great. So yeah, so we will highly encourage people to hobby with us on Saturday. I'm excited. It should be fun. I have to decide what exactly I want to do. I'm going to paint something. I guess I continue working on my Blood Bowl orcs. One day they'll be done. They're coming along. Sure, computer games counts as a hobby. Whatever you like doing can be a hobby. Embrace it. Love it. Share it with the world if it's something that's applicable and proper to share with other people. Yeah, or do a hobby people wouldn't expect you to have. I'm trying to think, do I have any? I mean, you all know all my hobbies. All my hobbies are very public and shared with everyone. But yeah, if you have weird hobbies, let us know about those too. Weird hobbies are cool. Or like, yeah, I love hearing about people who do like all the different kinds of woodworking. Uh, what's the where you burn the wood in patterns and things? Wood burning, I guess. That's a thing. We had a friend who was we had a friend of ours who was by all accounts like a normal dude, not super geeky. Was kind of into Star Trek, but not a super geek or anything like that. Um, yeah, just like a normal, like drank beer, watched sports, like a normal dude. And we went over to his house for something, and his house was just full of like wood burning stuff, and like all this artistic wood things that he had done, and then a lot of paintings of naked pregnant ladies. But like, people need hobbies. Hobbies are good. Hobbies are great. And yes, I expect to hear about all of your hobbies as well. Yeah, like I said, my hobbies are all on display, literally right here behind me, literally all over this table, all around me. Yeah, collecting, playing with things. Those are my hobbies. Do what you like. That's right. You like what you like, and you do what you like. Cool. Let's see if anybody else is online right now. Ooh, I left this open. Shouldn't do that. Being a geek is your hobby. That's a great hobby, and there's so much to it, right? There's so many great ways to be a geek these days. Somebody was just asking me in relation to my book. It's like, oh, could somebody be turned off by being told or being given your book because it's like, oh, if I give you this book, like I'm saying that you're a geek. Like, in this day and age, I don't think so. I think pretty much everybody's a geek now. Everybody watches, the Marvel movies. Everybody's seen Game of Thrones. It's not. It's certainly changed, yes, but nowadays, I mean, I think being a geek is pretty universal. I don't think, yeah, I don't think it has the any sort of negative connotations like it used to.